friends, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Meg. I post free hair education and tutorials every single Monday. And today we are going to be doing a hidden color and taking this to this. So we'll be doing a platinum retouch and this hidden rainbow prism. So let's get into it. This was actually a brand new client, so I did not do this color underneath, but it is beautiful. And we are just going to touch up those roots and get going. So before I do any lightening, I'm going to get her little baby hairs out of the way. I use these a lot for extensions. They're just like these Velcro strips and they just stick right to the hair. So all those little baby hairs won't be flying around and into the lightener. So I highly recommend these. They're so much easier than like a bunch of clips all over the head. And then I'm going to use my K18 molecular repair mist before we lighten. So I always go in with a little water first because that opens the cuticle so that the repair mist can better penetrate the hair. I am going to use a little color remover, so I'm just putting it all through her hair. And the color remover won't come until later because we are going to take care of those roots first. And while it like dries or air dries, I usually will mix up the lightener and then blow dry whatever is still wet after I finish mixing my lightener because that mist has to sit for 4 minutes. So whenever I do a hidden like platinum retouch underneath, I don't want to be working in horizontal sections because then it could go up and hit those roots on top. So I always like to work in these vertical sections like this. So normally I'll start right in the middle and then just very carefully painting over the virgin hair. I am using the Danger Jones Cream Lightener and 20 volume, but I used a little bit of the powder lightener inside of it. So I'll mix those two together sometimes because the cream is great for on the scalp gentle lift, but the powder definitely lifts a little quicker and it's a little stronger. So I'll add just a little of the powder into my cream to get it a little bit stronger. And I am just taking these really fine baby sections and only painting the virgin hair. Now her roots are short and light enough to not have to use any kind of foils. So I wouldn't recommend if somebody has like 4 inches of roots doing it this way, but because they are nice and short, we can take these really small sections and just hit those roots. And you can see how tight I'm pulling the hair as I'm painting. So when you're applying lightener onto virgin hair like this and trying to stay off of the previously lightened hair, it is such a delicate process. You have to be so much more careful than when you're working with permanent color. You can see how small my section is and how tight I am pulling it. You always want it to be super clean. You cannot get messy when it comes to lightener. With color, you can just kind of slap it on there and it doesn't matter if it hits the old color, but yeah, not with this. You can see just how careful I am being. Pulling each little section really tight as I paint. And then you can see I also paint on both sides of my section. So before I flip it, I'll cover that one and then pulling really tight, making sure that none of the hairs are bunched together, especially toward the top. You want to be really careful and also staying off of that virgin hair that's above it. If you do get any on there, just use your finger or a towel and brush it off before it can process and it will be fine. If you catch the lightener before it sits, you can get it off without it affecting that virgin hair. And I am just really carefully making my way to her ear and bringing those fine sections back, painting on both sides and being very, very careful. Especially, see right there how I'm using my thumb to get it off the virgin hair. That's all you have to do and it will not process. The lightener can only process if it's sitting there. So get it off in time and you'll be good. Now, I'll also say again that I started with the 20 volume, and if you've watched my videos before, you'll know that I usually start with a lower volume than that when I am doing foils. So, because I am not doing her entire head and it's just this small part underneath, that's why I'm not worried about using the 20 and just starting with my regular full strength because it's just a small amount and we want to get that quick lift done. And now that I'm done with the other side, I am just moving my section over and repeating the exact same thing underneath here, being very careful to stay off the virgin hair and wiping anytime I do. And then I like to create my own little down line right there, like you saw, to separate it from that top. And you can see my extremely tightly pulled, very small sections. And I am just like so intricate when it comes to lightning. You really have to be so careful, especially with somebody like this who has naturally light and fine hair. You really have to do everything you can to make sure that it stays really healthy and that you're not hitting those platinum hairs. Taking my fine section. And whenever I'm doing a color like this, I have a couple brushes that I like to use. This one I like because it has the metal rat tail comb, just like a regular comb would have. So instead of having to hold a metal rat tail comb and my brush, I just have this one with the metal comb on the bottom. Because sometimes those color brushes, they have like really thick ends and you can't get as nice of a clean section as you would with those rat tail combs. So I highly recommend keeping some of these on hand. I absolutely love them. Anytime I'm doing a retouch, I have them in a couple different sizes. Sometimes I'll like a smaller one, like for this underneath. And then I have a wider one that I like for regular platinum retouches, but highly recommend that rat tail comb end. And now we are almost through the back here, continuing those really small sections. And you can see how helpful those little Velcro things are to keep all those baby hairs out of the way. And now we can move to the front. So for the front, I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to use some cotton to protect her ear. And also it's going to give me a nice little platform to kind of paint on. So I'm going to take these almost like diagonal forward, a little bit horizontal sections, and just kind of going with the natural shape of her hairline directly above the ear. And then don't get as big of a blob as I did there because I had to wipe it off of the cotton. But we are going to do the exact same thing now. And I am just hitting those virgin hairs on the top and the bottom before I take my small section down and repeat. So very simple. You just have to stay off of the hair and work in, or off of the previously blonde hair, not all the hair, but stay off the previously blonde hair and work in really, really small, clean sections. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to pull on the hair when you're first painting it, because not only is it going to really smooth the hair out and give you a nice, clean section, but it's also going to prevent any shorter hairs from flying up when you hit the lightener on it. So sometimes if you're not holding down a section and you put color or lightener on, it will kind of stick and all those little hairs start flying around. So we don't want that. That's another good reason to hold your section nice and tight. But now we are going to move on to our color remover. Look at our beautiful blonde lift. I'm using my K18 mist one more time because I want to keep those ends nice and healthy. And then I'm just going through with my Danger Jones color remover and 15 volume. So in order to make a 15, I just mix together the 10 and the 20 because yes, there is not a 15 that you can buy. But I want to get this on as quick as possible. So I just work through in fairly large sections and really saturate it. Now, Like I said, this was my first time doing her hair, so I did not do this color and I did not know what brand it was. So it was not coming out as much as I wanted it to, but I knew that it was going to be fine and we were going to work with it. I was actually really surprised because normally the Danger Jones color remover works really great on like reds and pinks and oranges. And it really did not pull this pink out as much as I thought it would, but it took the blue out more than I thought it would. So that was impressive because it's usually the opposite. So, like I said, I have no idea what color line that was, but we're going to go with it. For my pink, I am going to be using Hustler and Lovesick from Danger Jones, which is the magenta and the hot pink. And for my orange, I will be using Hotwire and Burnout. Hotwire is the neon orange, and Burnout is just the standard orange. Yellow is going to be Starrider and Raygun, which is the regular yellow and the neon yellow. Then for my green, I've got Adrenaline with a little drop of Oblivion, but I squirted out way too much, so I had to scoop it. And for my blue, I will be using Oblivion, just a little bit of Oblivion with Ransom and Poolside. And there's my little bit more of Oblivion. So I have this like tealy blue. And for my purple, I am using Exotica and a little bit of Masquerade. And then I remembered that I have Sleepwalk, the new purple. So I put a little bit of that in there. And here is our palette so that you can see it on my notepad. Gorgeous. I love neon pastel rainbows. They are my favorite. All right, so let's get going. So today I'll be using the mesh sheets. You've probably seen me use plastic ones before, but you can use any kind you want, mesh, plastic, foil, balayage strips, whatever. And I always ask my client what color they want to see by their face. So her choice was pink, and then I'll say, would you rather go pink orange or pink into purple? So make sure that you give them those options because especially when she puts her hair back, when she's looking in the mirror, that color that's next to her face is going to be the first one that they see. So it's probably going to be their favorite color and what they want. So don't forget to ask that. And now you can see I have taken that super fine section, pulled it forward, and I am just painting my rainbow. And this first one is the only one where I do each color individually. And then after we get done with this very first section, I can just paint each color as I go through. So if I have like 4 pinks I have to hit, I can just hit them all that one time. I don't have to pick it up 3 or 4 different times. So now we are going to repeat, pull that forward and lay it down flat. I love to use a comb like this to make sure that it's perfectly clean. This is one of those colors where you really, just like the Platinum Retouch, have to have really fine sections and they have to be really clean sections. You can't let them get jumbled. You can't let the hair be flying all over the place. It has to be really perfect if you want to get that prism design. So we are just following that exact pattern, hitting my oranges and then my yellows. And you can see how I go through the entire line so I don't have to pick up the brush more than once. And this is pretty much it. It is honestly really easy once you get the hang of the pattern and working over the ear. So sometimes if it's a hidden rainbow like this, I'll love to stay above the ear, but because her color is so low, we have to go all the way down to the nape, which makes it a little difficult, but I'll show you my trick when we get there. But in the meantime, we are just pulling forward. And then you can see after the pink, I started with a purple on her scalp. So we are just going to be following the same pattern going backwards now. So because on her front, it goes pink, orange, yellow, that means that the purple is going to be behind the pink. So then we'll do about 2 sections where I use purple. And then on that third section, it'll be blue. So you just have to keep moving with that rainbow pattern as you make your way through the head. And I'm hitting each color one by one. So a project like this can definitely be really time consuming when you're first starting out, and even time consuming when you're experienced. But I'm telling you, if you just keep at it, then it will pick up and it will become easier every time you do it. And we are pulling that forward, laying it down flat with my comb. And now I'm starting with that blue. So I've got that little blue line, and I can take it all through the rest of the head. So I feel like once you get here, it is so easy because now you've got your pattern. The most important thing is just going to be matching it up on the other side and making sure that all of your sections stay about the same size. Now you can see here how pink her hair is still. Now, I have a lot of experience with Danger Jones colors, so I wasn't too worried because I knew they were going to be super vibrant and go over that pink. The only ones that I was slightly nervous about were like the yellows and the greens, that maybe you wouldn't be able to see them. And some parts near the back where we had a lot of pink, I would say the yellow didn't stand out as much, but it's so hidden that you can barely see it. And honestly, when it's down, like you would never know that it had pink and blue stripes that we were still working through. So really awesome how strong the Danger Jones colors are and how they can work through those old colors. So this is my over the ear trick. I am using another mesh sheet right on top of her ear so that I have something flat to paint on, because I don't want to paint directly on top of her ear. And if I angle the hair too much to go like above her ear, it's not going to match my rainbow pattern. So this part you have to be really careful and make sure that you're making your sections the same size as the ones underneath. And that way they all match up, because we don't want to have different sizes right behind the ear and then the rainbows in front are a little different than the rainbows in back. I mean, either way, it's still going to be beautiful, but we really want to try to connect them and make sure that they are about the same as the one underneath it. And I am just continuing to pull all that hair forward and following my pattern. You can see, poor thing, she's getting sleepy. It takes a while. I always say I get so tired when I get my hair done. It's exhausting. I just want to fall asleep in that chair every time. So I like my job much better of doing the painting than being the one sitting in the chair. But you can see how I pull all that hair forward and I'm really lying it down flat so I get those beautiful clean sections. And here's a little bit of a better view so you can see how everything is being pulled forward. And we have that like diagonal, and just painting each of my colors one at a time. Doing my pink and then my orange. And you can already see just how beautiful it's coming together. And you can also see the rainbow pattern in the back a lot better now too. How on the base it goes from pink, pink, purple, blue, green, yellow. I know colors. So following that pattern here, and especially if you're taking those really thin sections, you shouldn't have any trouble keeping your colors in the back the same size, because like I said, you're going to do about 2 sections with each color at the base. So especially after you get through your first couple colors at the base, it becomes really easy to identify that pattern, and then you can just keep following it. And you'll notice that my sections are a bit diagonal because we want it to kind of go into that triangle at the very end. So our very last section that we have is going to be pink again, and it's going to be in this like triangle shape, which when we get to the very back, you'll get a really good view of exactly what that's going to look like because I move the camera to the very back. But until then, we are just following our pattern, smoothing out that hair because we want our really nice straight section. And then, like I said, we get to pick up that brush only one time and follow it through each color. Now, this move right here, where I was kind of moving everything together with my fingers, you want to mash that color in, and that really helps with the blend. So you'll see me doing that a lot with my fingers and just blending the colors. But you can see my beautiful clean section. I feel like that is the most important part to show. I don't think you need to watch me paint every single line because at this point it's pretty self-explanatory. So once we get to the other side, I speed it up for sure so you don't have to just watch the same thing over and over again. But it is important to stay with that pattern and just painting directly on top of the previous section. And then see how I used my finger there, getting our nice fine sections. And you can see that orange line, how it's moving in that diagonal, and getting ready for our final triangle. And we are almost through our first half. This is our final pink section. And you really want to make sure that you split the hair in half and that you know exactly which half is which. Otherwise, you'll start grabbing hair. And we don't want it to go in the same pattern as this one. We want it to go the opposite direction because we want that V. So if you wanted to have just one waterfall all the way around the head, you could just keep taking it to where it was just like a diagonal rainbow line. But we want that like V prism tie-dye sand art looking effect. So we are starting over on the other side, doing the exact same thing, and we are split right in the middle down the back. So this here is my very first section, doing the exact same colors, starting with my pink and then my orange, then my yellow, my green, my blue, purple, and then back to pink. So this one, once again, is when you do those first sections, it is more tedious because you have to keep picking up the brush over and over again. But as soon as we get that other one on, it becomes a lot easier and a lot faster. So here's another great hack. You'll see I have a little color on the back of that mesh sheet. There was like pink right there. That helps it stick together to the other one so it's not moving around while you're painting. So just a quick little trick to keep your mesh sheets nice and straight and clean because it is really annoying when they're moving around all over the place, especially since she has such a small amount that's hanging on to the second one. So usually that would be like sliding all over and driving me nuts. So just put that little bit of color behind it and that will solve your problem. And we are just following our pattern. And like I said, once you get to this point, I feel like it's pretty hard to mess up. The most important thing is trying to match up the size of your rainbow panels and your sections with the opposite side. And that's pretty much it. Then just following it around the head. Because as long as you keep those sections clean and you keep pulling forward and everything is the same size, it's going to look amazing. But you can see I'm rubbing those colors together, taking my second purple one. I cannot stress enough, I know I show it every time, but lying it down flat and using my comb is such a great trick. And don't be afraid to like move the color around because with semi-permanent color, Danger Jones especially, as soon as it touches onto the hair, it's encapsulated. So it's not going to move around when you comb it down. One thing that I absolutely love about this color. And now we've got our over the ear, and I'll be moving the camera in just a second so that you can get a better view. There we go. So now you can see our diagonal line building in the back just a little better. And then I'll speed these up now because you have already watched this a bunch of times. So let's go faster. There is our beautiful rainbow and repeating the exact same thing. taking that diagonal section, pulling it forward, and you can really see the diagonal a lot better from this angle. And once again, we'll speed that up. Oh, if I could only paint this fast, can you imagine how many rainbows I could spit out in a day? And now you can see much better how it's like forming into that V. Gorgeous. And now this was the only part of her hair back here that I was talking about earlier where it's really, really pink. So some of the yellow definitely looked orange, but it still is beautiful and it's underneath her head. So it's not like it's showing and that anybody's going to be like, hey, that looks like it's supposed to be more yellow right there. But that was really the only part where the pink kind of failed me and couldn't see the yellow as much, but like I said, it still turned out gorgeous, which you'll be able to see in the back. And all the other colors worked out great. And now we are almost to our final little triangle. Right there, laying it down flat. And then I use my pink to paint that little triangle, and I've got my super tiny brush. And then we can go in with the rest of our colors. And that is it. That is how you paint a hidden rainbow prism. You can see they're meeting perfectly in the back there. And they form into that little triangle. And that is it. And I also wanted to show as soon as I finish that I do my little finger rub trick to get everything really blended, happy dance, and we are done. And then I also wanted to show while I'm rinsing it with ice cold water how clear that rinse is. A lot of people ask how I rinse it without them bleeding together, and it is just the color line. Danger Jones does not bleed together, and as long as you're rinsing with ice cold water, you're going to be good. I mean, look at how clear that water is. It's crazy. And I finished her off with my K18 leave-in mask, my K18 volumizing spray and heat bounce, as well as my leaf and flower frizz remedy spray and 7-minute blowout. Here is our gorgeous rainbow prism. You can see my little extra orange where there should be yellow, but that's okay. It still looks beautiful. And oh, it is like tie-dye, rainbow prism, sand art, whatever you want to call it. I love it. So gorgeous. And then my little neon rainbow butterflies, of course. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them and I love to answer them for you. Other than that, I will see you next Monday for another tutorial. And please like and subscribe in the meantime. Thanks, guys. Bye. And then I didn't take any of it curled in the back with the sideways angle, so here's a long way one. Bye.